Hi guys, so I just want to talk about animation exporting from Maya to Unity. So I'm going to start testing on a cube, as I usually do. We'll have a bunch of cubes. And I'm going to parent them. That's by middle mouse clicking and dragging. So that's parented. Cool. Now this might be a good time to quickly mention about double transforms. So if I select everything, have a look at what happens when I try to rotate. See how it kind of curls? This is because the parent is rotating, then the child is rotating, and the next child is rotating as well, all at the same time. So I'm going to run with that and set keyframes down here using the S key. So I press S, S. I am going to dedicate the first 2 frames to having no animation at all. This is so I have a default pose for my game so that I don't always have to have animation. And then over here I'm going to start the actual motion. I've got auto keyframes turned on at the moment, so I don't actually have to press S. I can actually just start moving this thing and it'll automatically animate. Like so. Cool. So if I want to bring this into Unity, best practice is to group it first using Control G. Always have a group node at the top. And this one doesn't have animation on it, and the reason you want this is so that you have a non-animated asset that you can just drag wherever you feel like, and the animation will not be affected. So we have our animation all set up, and we just want to bring it into Unity. So File, Export Selection. I'm going to overwrite this test FBX that I already have here. We do want to export as FBX. Just have a quick glance over my settings. The important ones are the geometry and animation. So these are my geometry settings. And my animation settings, only turn this on if you actually have animation. If it doesn't have animation, just disable it. And you do want this to be the range of your timeline. So 1 to 30 is my timeline over here. We do want to bake animation. What this does is it actually adds a keyframe on every single frame, so that Unity doesn't try to reinterpolate what our animation is doing in between frames. And we want to hit resample all over here. So I'm going to just save over the test.fbx that we have here. One last thing to check is that in your advanced options, under units, we are using centimeters, not automatic, and none of these guys, just centimeters. So overwrite that, or save out a new one if you want. And then it's just a matter of bringing this FBX into Unity. Not to get the project folder mixed up with the hierarchy one. So I'm going to drag this into models. What's it given us? It's given us a default animation clip here. We're just going to edit that. So click on your FBX, and under the animation menu, we're going to give this a name. I'm just going to call it motion. We're going to have another one that's called bind. Oops. Bind is from frame 1 to 2. This is the default pose, so the non-animated set of frames. Once you apply this, you should be able to preview it down here. Yep. Okay. The actual motion should be from frame 3 to 30 in my case. Apply that, and just preview it in this window. Yep, cool. So, you can see that this has renamed the animation clip down here. There's no longer take 001, it's actually, we've got our bind and motion animation clips, and they come from here because we named them over here. So I'm going to drag this in. It's already come with an animator component, but we do need to fill out the controller section of this. So I'm going to create a controller in the animators folder up here. I'm going to call it test. And going to drag that into the animators controller property. I'm just going to quickly check that test has our animations. It doesn't seem to have our animations, so I'm going to drag those in. Let's see. Test that this is working. Cool. I just noticed that it doesn't loop, so I'm going to come back into the FBX under the animations and set motion to loop. You have to apply it. Hit play again. Cool. And that's that. All done. Something else I'd like to touch on is one or two of you, or three, or a few of you maybe, may have used constraints in your animation. So in the past there's been problems with this because you can only export animation for things that actually have keyframes on them. Now, just a quick lesson on constraints. I'm going to duplicate this thing, delete these guys. Now I'm going to constrain this in such a way so that the rotation of this controls the rotation of this thing. So select this guy, and then select him. Under the rigging menu, come into constraint, check the orient constraint options, maintain offset, all, apply. Now when I rotate this, you can see that it also rotates this one over here. So according to our animation, it follows just fine. Now in the past, in previous versions of Maya and Unity, constraints do not follow over, and you actually have to bake this animation before you send it into Maya because this cube doesn't have keyframes on it. The only animation it has is thanks to the constraint between these two objects. I don't think this is a problem anymore, so if you are using constraints in 2016, I think you can just, let's see, we will we'll deparent this entirely just to prove that it's a separate object. You can see our constraint is there as well. Leave that alone. We have two separate objects. One was the export, and one is our constrained cube. Export these into that test FBX, like just overwrite it. And I think it should just be as easy as bringing this into Unity again. Delete the old one. Okay, I'm going to set the bind on these again. So bind, that's from frame 1 to 2. And motion. Frame 3 to 30. And make it loopable. Apply. And just test that. Okay, it looks like we don't need to have keyframes or baked animation on our constrained objects anymore. It actually just exports with the FBX. And I think the FBX exporter auto bakes this constraint animation, which actually should have been the way that it always was, because according to the exporter, we are baking animation when we export. So just a proof of concept. Drag this in, get rid of the other test. I wonder if I can just reuse the same... No, I won't be lazy. I'll go through, make this animator all over again. Animator controller, test, apply the controller, set up the animator controller in here. We won't use bind for now, we're just going to set this to our default and test that out. Cool. Now for the purpose of your summatives, you do need to have this lit. We do actually have a light by default, so this doesn't actually require you to do anything. Now, let's see. I guess just to make it obvious that it's there is light in this world, we will make it plain. And perhaps our object's actually too small to cast shadows properly. This is because I modeled all the stuff at 1 centimeter, which is, as we know, is tiny. It's like this big. I'm pretty sure we can solve this just by making it like 100 times bigger. Yep. So it wouldn't cast a shadow on something that small because look at the quality of our shadows. It's actually quite low resolution. So when an object is only this big, there's actually not enough object there to cast a shadow according to this resolution. That is partly because of our resolution here. I'm just going to use quality settings. Anyway, it's all fine now. Let's bring this up so we can see it and test it out. Yeah, working nice. Cool. One last note about Maya to Unity, something that gets overlooked quite a lot, and I overlooked it when I was tutorializing earlier, is the scale of objects. Unity works in centimeters, so if we actually model something in Maya that's 1 unit, it's actually 1 centimeter as long as you do have your settings set that way. So 1 unit is a centimeter, not a meter or an inch. This cube is 1 centimeter big, so we need to make it like 100. Now this cube is now 1 meter in size. So just remember to scale your objects up, or alternatively you can work in meters. Now when I create a cube, it's going to automatically come out as 1 meter. Now let's see, I'm going to change back to centimeters. Look what happened over here. These values were at 1 before, and when I changed back to centimeters they became 100. So that is just telling us that we are now 100 centimeters, 100 units in width, height and depth. Just something to keep in mind, that scale is important when you are working on your models, and to remember to adjust your scale correctly when working from Maya to Unity.